Yeah.
There we go. All right, now we are back in the Dvar Malchut. Dvar Malchut. All right. Where do we get up to? Oh, I think we got up to here. This is pretty rich, this speech. So we're going to have to do a lot of it tomorrow, but it's really rich. What's this? Yeah. Okay, good. You're right. You're right. Here we go. Right. Why people are suffering now is totally beyond me. I wish I could explain it. I mean, I don't want to explain it. I would just do away with it. Like we said, transform it. Okay. So that's basically what happened with Moses and Aaron against Korach. I know that here in Israel, we're learning Parshas Chukas and Korach is by you. But the reason we're talking about this is because see, where are we up to now? I don't remember what we got up to. I think we got up to here. So what do we say? That God is creating everything, and He wants us to reveal. He wants us to realize that. He wants us to realize that He's creating everything, and that's why sometimes He makes some miracles. He makes miracles that change nature to bring us to the realization that the world is not to be taken for granted, and we're not to be taken for granted. You can't take anything for granted. That we have to be thankful and grateful for everything, for every detail. And one way of showing our gratitude is by thinking and realizing, right, that God is creating. Another way is by speech, saying thank you to God, thanking God. Another way is by deed, using the world the way that the Creator wants us to use. Because that changes nature. Okay, because that was the whole miracle that God made in the with Aaron's staff. The staff of Aaron is that like the staff of the other tribes, the leaders of the tribes. The staff of Aaron, it grew almonds. He said, but the fact is, it didn't just grow almonds; it grew also flowers and buds and also fruits. And when Aaron took out his staff, all three were there. The whole process was there. The Rebbe says, why was it all there? To show that God didn't just do a miracle. And when the miracle stopped, everything came back to normal. That God changed normal. He actually changed the nature of the staff. And nature became changed. Nature became a miracle. In order to encourage us to realize that it's the same thing now. I mean, the sun comes up in the morning, of the world, or Earth turns around, whatever you want to say, and that's a big miracle that happens. It's not to be taken for granted. And if you say, well, the scientists, they don't have an explanation for it, so it must be a big miracle, even if the scientists do have an explanation for it, that's also a miracle. And it's a miracle that they can find an explanation and that the explanation works, that there's laws of nature. That's a big miracle. That things go and return them the same way over and over again. That they say that the people that don't believe in God, so they say that the earth has been spinning around, the planets have been up there and spinning around like for trillions and trillions of years. You can't find anything in the world that's been working for trillions of years. Trillions of years, the same thing, without any changing. That's pretty amazing. That's incredible. And so nature itself is above nature. If you want to say that God is doing it, we Jewish people say definitely God is doing it. And not only that, that makes everything infinitely human. Infinitely human. The world is really real, and everything that's here in the world is there for a purpose. To serve the Creator, to reveal the Creator. Okay. This is okay. Let's go to Vav. Here we go. According to understand, now we can understand the miracle of that the sun stood still. The sun stood still for Joshua. The intention was Not that the sun should go out of nature, show a big miracle, it was just standing there. Ella, but like in the majority of cases, that the miracle, Yisayah, it helped the miracle. It wasn't that God was just showing off. God wanted to help Joshua win the battle. Shekashura gam in derech hateva, and he wanted it to win in a normal way, right? Like the Rebbe said before, God could have just made that the Jews had the ability to see in the dark. That's what it was in the plague of darkness. It says there was darkness for all the Egyptians. Will be called Yisrael or b'moshvotam. It says the Jews, they could see. Why not make it the same way here? It's a big problem. You have to stop the whole sun, the moon, everything. You have to stop everything just for the Jews. Make it that the Jews can see in the nighttime. Such a big deal. They can do that now, right? They have what is it? Night glasses, night binoculars, something like that you can see. So it's not that big of a miracle. Why did God have to do this massive miracle and stop the heavens, right? Just so that there should be light outside. Just do the same miracle as he had before. God already had that in his storehouse. Let's see, look, was it seeing in the dark? Seeing in the dark, 15a. Okay, say the angel, right? Give me, let's see, how many Jews are there over there? How many Jews fighting with Joshua? He's got an army of 10. Give me 10,000 seeing in the dark miracles, right? Yeah, sure. The ones we used in Egypt back there when the Jews, sure, we got a lot. We have a lot more, but no, that's enough. Just a few 10,000, that's good enough. But why not? Why did he have to stop the sun? Why? Because he wanted to show that all of nature is really a big miracle, and it's there in order to help us. Therefore, therefore, it wasn't a miracle that stopped the war in a natural way by means of Joshua. It said the Rebbe before, if you remember, I got a better way to do it. Let's make it that all of the enemy, they got paralyzed temporarily, and the Jews just went in, right, and carried them all out, right? They're paralyzed, can't do anything. So they just carried them all out, put them in the field or something like that, or put them on life support. And then the Jews take over the land. There's a big problem. No, God wanted it to be in a natural way. But God wanted there to be a miracle that would help nature. Neshe Sayeh, that would help the war that they made. Ha'achana, the preparation, the hachshara, and the how do you say the preparation and the the steps that were previous to the miracle was by means of by means of the victory was by right the steps and the preparation for the victory was by means of this miracle of the sun standing still. But God himself did not make the victory. Or after the sun stood still and the day lengthened out, Jews and the Jewish people had to run after and fight with the enemies in a natural way. According to this, and even more, it's logical to say that the miracle itself of the sun standing still, it was in such a way that it was kashur b'tevar mahalach hashemesh, that it changed the whole idea of the path of the sun. In other words, it stopped not just the sun and the moon, so it says over there in the book of Joshua, but it stopped all the stars and all of the the constellations. Umahalech galgalayomi, the whole going of the heavens in general. Kala galgalim and everything that was going connected to the sun. Like I said before, according to Judaism, according to the Rambam, according to this, that the earth stands still. The earth is not, and that it's the heavens that go around. The heavens go around the earth. And the Rebbe pointed out that he knows that what modern astronomy says, and that it's been proven. The Rebbe said it hasn't been proven one way or the other that the earth goes around the sun or the sun goes around the earth, because there's no stable point to stand on that we can judge. Everything is relative to everything else. So you can make calculations either way. And like I said before, the Jews have been making calculations for thousands of years. I wanted to look that up. When was Copernicus? Copernicus was like 100, 500 years ago. When was it? Let me just give me one moment to see how this Copernicus. When was he? He had this thing of the. Well, he was the one, right? Just 1 second. Copernicus. Oh, here it is. Copernicus. So Copernicus was an astronomer. In 1500. He was born in 1473, 1543. In other words, that was what? Now we are like 500 years ago, less than 500 years ago. So before that, everybody really thought that the earth was stable and it went around and that everything went around us, went around it, right? Is that right? I don't know. It does anyway. So that, at least I know when he was born. Okay. And the Jews made their calculations that way. And here he's saying that that's the fact. The fact is that the earth, but in fact, says the Rebbe, you can't really tell. If the Torah wouldn't make a decision, you could easily say the other way, and if you want to make it the other way. But the fact is that the sun stood still. Right? According to modern science, astronomy, the miracle was easier. The miracle was easier. Just the earth stood still. Earth stood still. Then for sure, right? For sure that the whole constellation stood still because everything stopped moving. The earth stopped moving. But the Rebbe is saying, no. That really the fact that the sun and the moon are independent, each star, each planet is independent from the others. They move in their own paths because that's the path that they move in. And if God wanted to, he could have just stopped the sun alone. The Rebbe said, it's logical to say that not just the sun and the moon, but all of the stars stopped, the whole entire, how do you say, the heavens stopped revolving around the earth. This is because they all sing. That's what it means that they were quiet. They stopped singing their song. It says that the song that they have, that's the vibration of life that are in the stars and the planets. Everything in the world is alive. It has its own soul. Rocks, everything is alive, right? It just has a different type of a soul. The Rambam says also that the stars are like angels. The stars, the planets, they're like angels. It's more than just the rocks on the ground. Okay, why was it the sun? Why did he pick this thing of the sun? The sun stopped singing a song. It says it stopped singing its song. Why didn't God really make them all fall asleep or something? Because the whole point is that the Gentiles, they receive their power from the sun. They're like the sun. It doesn't change. So that's one of the reasons why a non-Jew is not supposed to keep Shabbat. Because the whole thing of Shabbat is to put godliness into the changes of the world. And the job of the non-Jew is not to make holy the changes of the world. It's to make order in the world as it is, as the world is. Therefore, a non-Jew is not supposed to say that one day is more holy than another day. The Jewish people say that there's one day more holy than the other day. Joshua wanted to make the whole world, so to speak, realize this. Joshua wanted to stop the influence of the sun on the Gentiles, on the Umas Olam. She'ovdim, that they used to be, that they worship the sun and the moon. Kochavim and Mazalos. And by means of this, Nifal, that's what made the miracle. That's what made the victory. By weakening their spiritual source of egotism and selfishness, which came from the sun, is by means of this, they didn't have the power to defeat the Jews. I hope he's according to this, it's logical to say that by means of the sun standing still is Netzar that was stopped, not just the going of the sun and the moon, but also all of the stars, everything was stopped. Everything was nature itself stopped. Similarly, maybe we can also say the same thing, the miracle of Gimel Tamuz. What happened in Gimel Tamuz when the previous Rebbe got out of prison? Where in prison, he was under the threat of under the threat of death. Right? Anybody could shoot him any moment that they wanted to, and they did. They were killing people right and left all over the place. And when he was in prison, his life was constantly being threatened. And the Jews that put him into prison, they would have done anything to kill him. They wanted to kill him immediately. And they just couldn't. It was withhold. Even after the Rebbe was released, So it says that he went to Moscow, and the Yevsektia, the Jews that were the communist Jews, they wanted to kill him. They wanted to do anything. They were trying to appeal to the government and petition to the government that they should put him back into prison again. And he had to run away from them. So it wasn't really so sure when they sent him, Gimel Tammuz, when they sent him from prison to exile, what was the situation was any better. But the fact is, it was infinitely better. When he was in prison, he was constantly under the threat of death. And with Gimel Tammuz, it says that there was a it says that the previous Rebbe saw on the desk of the officer, of the official that sent him into exile, he saw that the Frierdiker Rebbe, he saw that his portfolio was open, and it said there a punishment. And first of all, it said death by shooting, and that was crossed out because he was supposed to have been killed the first night. I told you, but there was a mix-up, so he didn't get killed the first. They figured, okay, we'll kill him later. So they wrote no, because they started mounting world pressure. Stalin wanted to put a veneer of righteousness and how do you say, of kindness. Communism was kindness and goodness and benefiting the people and caring for the poor and caring for the unfortunate worker and doing away with class differences, all these wonderful ideas that they had. And he wanted to present this to the world, and that was the situation. Right? We're talking about this is 1927. And he wanted to show the world that communism was good and that he was just a leader like any other leader. And so when the pressure started mounting that they had this rabbi, that they were torturing them and putting him into prison for no reason, all of a sudden, miraculously, people started caring about a poor rabbi, a Jew, right? It says even the Germans helped get him out. A whole long story. What was his name? It was an officer, Bloch or something. You got this whole amazing story about how the Rebbe was in the bombing of Warsaw, and they let him out. The Germans helped him to get out. That all began on Gimel Tammuz. Gimel Tammuz was the day that suddenly things began to transform. And later, like we say, what was it, 70 years later, 60 whatever years later, suddenly we realized what the real implications of his freedom of Gimel Tammuz was, that the whole Iron Curtain fell, all of communism fell. It says the miracle of Gimel Tammuz, that Gimel Tammuz was also the day when the sun stood still for Joshua. Right? So the same thing is also with the previous Rebbe. The fact is that what happened was a tremendous miracle, totally above nature. And this wasn't just a temporary miracle that just affected, for a while, like it says when the Yam Suf, that it went over, it says that there had to be this wind blowing. As soon as the wind stopped, as the waters came back together. That's one way of looking at it. But then there's another way of looking at it, like the staff of Aaron, that it permanently changed. Also with Joshua, the sudden moon stood still, that the nature, the astronomy actually changed. And that God, in order to make it come back, God made another miracle and made it come back to normal. One day. There was, so the same thing said the Rebbe, with the previous Rebbe getting out of prison on the third day of Tammuz. This affected nature, affected the world. It wasn't just an individual isolated incident that happened to one big rabbi, one miracle, and then that's it. No, it changed the whole nature of the world. That the Rebbe, that nature itself, he schemed the nature itself changed and agreed to this miracle that the Rebbe would get out. Suddenly the communists really became kind. The communists really said, we'll let him out. We're not going to kill him. They were killing everybody. They were killing people like flies. And they were more interested in killing people than killing flies. They killed millions. Stalin killed millions of people. All of a sudden, they changed their nature with this rabbi, and he was like public enemy number one. He was really doing things against Stalin. He was educating a philosophy, a policy which was diametrically opposed to communism. Judaism, that there is God, and God cares about people, and that there should be rich people and poor people, and the rich have to give charity to the poor people, and that benefits the poor people and the rich people more. That's all these ideas of serving God and loving God and believing in God. That was the antithesis of communism. And suddenly these communists said, "Oh, well, we're going to let this rabbi out. We're going to help him. We don't want to kill him. We'll assist him." And in the end, it says that they let him out with all of his books. He had thousands and thousands of crates. He had 10 crates, I don't know, of books, precious books. And they said, "We're not letting anything out. We're going to check the books." He said, "Okay, I'll wait." And the world pressure was mounting. And they said, "Let him out with all the books, everything." Well, Bafrad, especially in the beginning, this was a miracle that was in nature, right? There was a mistake. They didn't kill him because he went down the wrong eye. Everything seemed to be natural, and especially regarding the nace, the miracle of the staff of Aaron grew fruits, or the sun stood still. Right? What was the miracle of the previous Lubavitcher Rebbe? I mean, if you think about it for one moment, it wasn't such a big miracle. What's the miracle? There were a bunch of murderers that were called the communists, and they didn't murder him. I mean, that's here, you're living, I mean, wherever you live, I'm sure you're not surrounded by murderers. The fact that people don't want to kill you, that's not such a big miracle. It's just that the communists were so evil and bad that they didn't kill him. That was a miracle. No, such a miracle. All they had to do was just come to their senses and realize, what am I killing people for? What am I doing this for? A miracle is the sun standing still. Oh, everybody sees that's a miracle, right? That's a miracle. That the communists don't want to kill people, that's a miracle. They came to their senses. So no, the fact of the matter is if you look into it, you'll see that changing nature of a person is a bigger miracle than the sun standing still. You do with it, those people that put the Rebbe into prison, they themselves, they had to transform and help him. That they had to they even aided him in going out. Like I said, they let all the books out. In other words, the nature of the people changed. Yesh Lomer, we can say, Shaloch, and therefore, Lo Bo Anes, it didn't come at one time. They say that in communist Russia, that one of the reasons that it was so backward and there was such a tremendous failure was because in order to keep, right, they believed that communism was so good and so precious and it was going to be beneficial to all mankind, that anyone that was dared to think against it, he was an enemy of all mankind. How do you know what people are thinking? How do you know? So it says that they made spies, and 1/3, that's what they say. I heard it from several places. 1/3 of the population of Russia were spies. Everyone was spying on everybody else. They taught in the schools, the children, if you see your parents have money hidden in it, report them. Everyone was spying on everybody else. That's how we killed so many people. Right? People would come in and say, my next door neighbor, he said something against Stalin. Did you say something against Stalin? No, I didn't. See how he said, no, I didn't. He didn't really mean it. Kill him. That was an unnatural situation. Go to Russia now. Who's a spy? I'm sure that they have spies, but not 1/3 of the nation. We can say that was a question we asked in the beginning. Why didn't God do the whole miracle at once? Right? Why didn't he just let the Rebbe out? Right? Okay, they would imprison the Rebbe, and then they just one day let him out totally. No, there had to be stages. First of all, there was Gimel Tamuz. They let him out a little bit. And then afterwards, 12th day of Tamuz, they told him he was free, but he didn't have his papers. Then on the 13th, they gave him his papers. And then they let him out, but he had to stay in Russia. And then they let him out from Russia, but he was stuck in Poland. And there was the war. And then he got a Russian. Then he came to America. Why did it have to be so many stages? It says it's the same exact idea. Because God wanted the miracle not just to be in nature, but to change nature itself. Why did it have to come in all these different levels and etc.? It says, because that's what I just said. Because the nature of them, of the world, of the communists, of the people in prison, they should themselves recognize, that they should release the Rebbe. But okay, it went back. They went back to their old ways. They were still murdering people for a long time, up to the 50s, I guess, to 53, right? when Stalin died and Khrushchev took over, he said, "That's it. We're not killing people anymore," and he meant it. It was really true. Well, at least, I mean, I'm sure that they, you know, and there must have been some, like every other nation in the world, there are spies there are intrigues and everything like that. But there was, he said, and he revealed all of the sins of a famous thing, Khrushchev, that he made a big meeting and he locked the doors. There were like 500 big officials that they adored Stalin. The mention of the word of Stalin put fear into everybody's, even after he was dead. And Khrushchev stood up and he revealed he was like Stalin's right-hand man for a long time. All of the murders and all the terrible things, and people had heart attacks. They listened. They had to be carried out. So the Rebbe, the previous Rebbe, he started this, that they suddenly would realize that they were wrong, that they would refrain. True, it only happened just by him. And they afterwards resumed their murderous tactics. But eventually it came out when as soon as Stalin died that everybody adopted this whole attitude that they adopted. What are we killing people for? And that also was gradually, still there were spies all over the place, and still you couldn't get out of Russia, and still they suspected until came Gorbachev. That was what the 40 years later, Gorbachev came and he said, "That's it, no more communism. Anybody can go in, anybody can come out." But the whole process started gradually. Why? It said because the idea of the Rebbe was to change nature, to show that nature is really godly, to appreciate the creation and every detail of the creation as a miraculous, intentional miracle from God. Every detail. Hechil, beginning from, first of all, they stopped. They said that the Rebbe wasn't going to get killed, right? That was in Gimel Tamuz, and then they decided to send them to Kastramar, to send them to this city of exile. And then finally, a few days later, they freed him completely. But even afterwards, like I said, he had to remain in that country for a while. They had to remain in that country for a while, and there they were Nagdud Ladat Yisrael, because they were against Judaism, they were against religion. Communism was against religion. But then afterwards, therefore, he was the Jewish people, him and the Jewish people had to remain there for a while, until finally, and this happened right before the Rebbe was speaking over here, that all of the Jews in Russia could reach, all of the Jews in Russia were affected by the Russian government realizing lahakara, the yatchilu, and they started misham laharshot, to permit the Jewish people to litnaeg b'chavshiut, to conduct themselves in a free way in everything they wanted in Judaism, and also to permit Jews to go out from that country and even to help them. So it all began with the Rebbe defying them, defying death, and then all of a sudden nature started to change. That's the point. And that's the idea of Moshiach. The idea of Moshiach is that the nature of the world, the bad side of the world, will turn around. Like we say in the Aleinu prayer every day. All the evil people will turn to the Creator. And like we learned in the Kuti Torah, that really the source of bad in the world, the source of bad is really good. And the reason it's bad because it doesn't realize it's not connected, doesn't feel its source. But when it does, everything changes around. This is even right now, says the Rebbe, Shakla Bataria, that the argument, V'haratzon, and the desire, the Kama V'kama, many in that country, is Lahachzir et Ha'ir Leningrad. Said the Rebbe, now we're taking the city, which is called Leningrad, and they want to change it in Israel, Shaya Masar Yeshiva. That's where the Rebbe was imprisoned, was in Leningrad. That's where the prison. Change it. Hashem Sheim Notnu Log, he gave it, the Chazara to Petersburg. There was going to be Petersburg again. Shem Ma'ir, what it was in the time when the first Rebbe of Chabad was imprisoned by the Tsar. Hashem This was the name Shahat Sarar, that the Tsar, who also was a big anti-Semite, that's what he called it in the time when he built the city. He called it by name of Peterburg because Peter was one of the saints of his religion. And that's the opposite of communism. Communism said no more. Our saints are Lenin and Stalin, and those are our saints. Right? Forget about God. God is false. No such thing as God. That's communism. We have to do it on our own. How do they say that religion is the opiate of the masses? So, and we know the story. I mean, basically, Napoleon basically had communist ideals. A little bit different from communism, but not that much different. You wanted equality and liberty and fraternity, all these wonderful slogans that communism is based on, Napoleon also wanted. There's going to be freedom, there weren't going to be any class differences, and etc. Equality, that was one of his things. And the first Rebbe of Chabad, despite the intense anti-Semitism of the Tsar and their whole religion of the Tsar, but nevertheless, he favored the Tsar over Napoleon. I told you about that he even sent spies to spy on Napoleon, because he said that if Napoleon wins, it's going to be a destruction for the Jewish people, a catastrophe spiritual. So materially will be great for the Jews. It'll elevate the glory of the Jewish people. Napoleon wanted to make the state of Israel. He wanted to make the state of Israel. There was going to be a Sanhedrin with 500 people, a whole business he had. And what did they do? As soon as the country fell, as soon as communism fell, so they considered, let's change the city's name from Leningrad, who's like the high priest of communism, right? And let's change it back to Peterburg, which was a religious name, the nemesis of communism. That was the name of the city when the Alter Rebbe was there. Hasham Shetzar, that was the name that the Tsar called it, the name of that city, that this is because the opposite of communism. Hagam, even though that underneath the rulership of the Tzurar, the Rebbe calls them the Tzorer. Tzorer means the enemy, the how do you say, the nemesis of the Jewish people. His name was the Tsar. They call it the Tzorer. Okay, anyway, under the Tsar, they really opposed Judaism, the Tsar did. But nevertheless, it doesn't reach to what happened by means of when they put the previous Rebbe into prison. The Tsar, they opposed Judaism, but they didn't stop the Jews from worshiping. They didn't close down the synagogues. And they just wanted to take the children away and make them into the Russian Orthodox or whatever. But they still allowed Judaism to exist. In communism, they didn't allow Judaism. In order, officially they had a big synagogue where you could go because they wanted to make an appearance to the world, a show to the world that they were for religion and everything like that. But the whole thing was a big lie. They weren't only opposed to Judaism; they were opposed to all religion. And changing it back to Peterburg was a sign that you can worship God again. You can worship God in your own way. They used to say that this whole this discussion that they're having and the desire that they have to change the name of the city from Leningrad to Peterburg, this shows in a clear way, even more than anything else, what the previous Rebbe accomplished on Yud Beis or Yud Gimel Tamuz. Namely, that the world, the nature of the people changed. Ha'geula klali, the Kol Bnei Israel, all the Jewish people, from their opposition in general, and especially in that country in Russia. Says the Rebbe, we can attach this to the month of Tammuz, and tomorrow, Friday, God willing, we will learn this. Now, let us do the Yom Yom.